What's up, guys? 2:19 in the morning. Science, whatever. I'm gonna try and go for a 4-minute tonight. Look, what I'm trying to say is, I just want to say hi. Hi, what's up? What's your name? Okay, that's cool. Cool name. Yeah, it's a great name. I like it. Sounds nice. Construction Stories, Part 13. We have these giant cranes. I may have previously mentioned them in the previous videos. And they're just these huge, and they just do work all night. You're like walking around, and then you look up and you're like, oh, that's just a 7,000 steel giant beam in the sky. Whatever. And then you keep doing your job because you're like, oh, it's safe. It's really not. The people that run the cranes don't have a lot of, how do I say this? They can't see the ground as well as everyone else because they're in these huge cranes that are super high up in the sky. And so they have people called spotters or trained riggers. Yeah, good word. That's the word. Qualified riggers that get on the radio with him. And they're like, hey there, Bob. Come around this way. And he's like, okay. And so the riggers are his eyes and ears. And he just listens and does what they tell him to, okay? And so the riggers tell him to come over here, come down. They hook up the thing to the giant hook of death, and then they tell him to pick it up and carry it around somewhere else. So when they do that, they have to follow it around, like, they're on the ground and it's in the sky, and so they're, like, running after this thing. Like, up in the sky, it's like, nyeh, but then down at the bottom, you're like, my legs plus ground equals, I need to move fast in order to get there with that thing. And another thing is you're not supposed to be under the load while it's being swung. So you'll hear a siren that goes off whenever it's in the middle of a swing. And it's like, whoop, whoop, and you're like, and then you just run somewhere else that it's not going to. And the riggers, as they're going from one side to the other, they yell overhead. So they're like, hook, okay, go ahead. Overhead! And so everybody knows, they're like, oh, that sound was near to me. It's probably over my head. Get out the way. So, that's a terrible song. Oh yeah, that's where I was going with this. So, everybody has their different ways of saying overhead, and it varies between overhead and run or die, because you either run away from the load or you die by it hitting you. But people don't say that as often just because it takes more time. So they just yell overhead. A lot of people will just go, overhead, and that's it. But other people will be like, overhead, or overhead, or, just different variations of that, okay? And so you're able to be like, overhead, oh, it's that one guy, because you can always recognize the way he says it, because he just mechanically says it over and over all the time. And so today, I get to work, I'm walking in, I come out, see my stuff, oh look, they're flying stuff, and this guy's like, overhead, and then, sometimes you'll mess with the guys, and so some random dude who's just doing his job is like, overhead, and then some other guy, like, also doing his job, yells that back, and another guy does it, until there's like 8 people all yelling overhead back and forth to each other, which is really funny if it didn't have to do with, like, dying. But that makes it even funnier, because you could die. That was it. That wasn't it. But a lot of stuff happened tonight. It was fun, but it's also my 4-minute mark. I passed it. I'm a terrible person. I'm sorry, guys. Have a good night. I'm going to go take a shower and possibly molest somebody who's in my roommate's room. Don't worry. It's not like that, but it also totally is. So, good night. Have a good night.